Welcome to The Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor and also a family business advisor. In this show, we will be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family businesses, this podcast is for you. Today, we're rewinding the tape and bringing you one of our most impactful conversations from the past. These are the episodes that started it all, foundational stories, powerful insights, and timeless lessons from families in business, experts in the field, and leaders who've shaped the way we think about legacy. Whether you're tuning in again or hearing it for the first time, there's always something to take away. So let's hit play on today's Legacy on Repeat. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad you made it in from Toronto. How was your train ride in?
It was good. A little early, but it was nice. I got to, get ready for this and have some time. So it's good.
Perfect. Brett, you've been in the coaching industry for a long time. Mm-hmm. I first met you actually when you were my advisor and strategic coach many years ago. Tell me, what is the most common, downfall or stressor with businesses and business families?
A lot of it comes down to lack of communication or over communication sometimes. Is finding that nice balance for giving feedback or presenting ideas or all of things. There's so many layers to communication. So I feel like that's probably one of the biggest things that needs to be worked on by everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Both in the family and in the business, right? Just in general.
In general. Humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What would you describe as communication?
I mean, you can go the obvious route of words and how we talk to one another, or you can go a little bit deeper into our visuals of how people, the whole body language thing. I think we all know that that's one of the largest tools of communication is our body language. So like the eye roll, would that be? That's a huge communication. Yeah. Huge communication tool. Posture, tone of voice.
Does it really comes down to the first impressions? Do you think sometimes it's that whole body language and like that before you've even said anything, right? Or the tone of your voice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we're like, oh.
So consider yourself, you're at a grocery store and you're walking up to the cashier. How that cashier is presenting themselves can sometimes determine how you're going to interact with them.
Yeah.
And vice versa. How they see you approach them might influence how they're going to interact with you.
Now, I know there's been a lot of studies on communication and not just the verbal words, but the like you say, the posture, the eye rolls, the nonverbal, the tone of your voice. When you yell at your kids, right? There's a difference when you talk to your dogs and you go, "Oh, here, puppy, whoopee,"
Yes.
as opposed to "Get over here."
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So, what are the numbers on that? I know we've talked about this in the past, but what's the statistics on the nonverbal?
The nonverbal is about 55% of your communication.
Wow.
So that's your body language. From the smallest thing, like you said, to an eye roll, to literally like turning a cold shoulder to someone.
Right. Arms folded.
Exactly. The closed off postures, or the more open postures. If you want to get to know someone, if you're going to go flirt with someone or whatever, a lot of that is all that nonverbal body language.
Yeah, I know that it's plays a big role in, again, from a distance or from, you don't even have to know anybody to know kind of what kind of mood they're in, right? So the verbal, what we say is not always the most important thing, right? It's, again, the posture. I remember my son would be in a meeting with his arms folded, and that was just a comfort level because there's no arms on the chair, right? So you sit with your arms folded because it's a good place to put them, and very quiet. And so the thought was that he's not engaged, and that's really not it, because you look and you go from the non, verbal and the posture side things, he looks like he's not engaged, when in fact it was just a comfort level, but it's that perception. And I did say that to him one day. I said, make sure, because you look closed off when you have your arms crossed. People always assume that you're closed off, and that's really not the intent. And so we can do that to others, or we can portray that we're very closed by just our posture, right?
For sure.
And I'm fascinated that there's like 7% in the verbal side.
The
Because you think your
itself.
words, because you think the words are the ones that are the cutting edge, like you're going to cut in with the words, but really it's all the other stuff that's really important, right?
I remember my dad would always say, watch your tone of voice, right? So I feel like
Don't use that tone with me.
Correct. Yeah. So I feel like I always had to really monitor myself and how I spoke with others.
Yeah.
Not just him. And so I feel like if you're aware of some of those things, you're more cognizant in conversation. So, to the point of your son with the arms crossed in meetings and looking closed off. I mean, some of it is just how we've learned to cope with things, and it just becomes a habit.
Right.
And
so
no
arms
we
on
can
a chair. I mean,
relearn.
Where do you put your arms? You put them on the table. Like people say, get your arms off the table. Get your arms off the table. You can't, like, where do you hang them
There's
down
no
by your
right
side?
way.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So it's what we perceive. Right. And I think that's the biggest issue with communication is that it's perception a lot of times, and it's not really what you're trying to do. And so we use, as you know, 2 assessment tools in our company, and which we're going to get to actually in another podcast. Yeah. But I want to talk about the 3 parts of the mind. So there's 3, parts of communication, and now there's 3 parts of the mind. And do you want to kind of run us through the 3 different types?
Sure. So the first part of the mind is the cognitive part of your mind. This is your intelligence. This is school-based learning. It's job experience. The second part of the mind is your affective part of the mind, which is your feelings, your likes, dislikes, preferences. And then the third part of the mind is conative, which is the action part of the mind, or doing, I should say. And it's your striving instincts, or how you choose to take action when you have the skills, which is that cognitive piece, and the motivation, which is the affective. So you really need all 3 to take action.
And so that becomes a big part of communication, as well as understanding those and what they mean, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And we're going to get into those again in another podcast. But I think just to set it up that there is, more to communication than just the words. We assume it's just the words, and it really is a very small part of it. It's about all the stuff that comes into play. And, is there like sort of a defining thing to say that I'm not effectively communicating, or when someone's not effectively communicating? Is it because now you can't say that you're not speaking because it's only 7%. So now when I say to my husband, "You never talk to me," right. It's like it shouldn't be that, because I can tell by his body language, or something like that. So I don't actually want him to listen to this, because then I can't complain about him. But what is one of the biggest things that you'd see, or is a big wake up that you're not communicating very well?
On the listening side of things, I think we spend so much time trying to be heard that we forget to also in turn step back and listen when others are talking. So again, when it's not the word choice, it's not necessarily what they're saying, it's what's behind what they're saying is what they're really trying to communicate. And again, that comes back to the struggle of humans being able to communicate actually what they're thinking or feeling, which comes back to that nonverbal and everything. And so when we don't know what to say, we can say things that might be passive aggressive or aggressive or hurtful, or might come across as not genuine because we're trying to overly compliment someone to make up for something. So I think there's a lot to how people can effectively communicate. But I think a lot of it starts with listening to really that underlying issue.
We're going to talk a little bit more about Print and Colby in another extra. Keep mentioning that, because I think this is one of our the tools that we use in Blue Roots, and we'll talk more about them. Ways to improve communication or understand the communication and the way people communicate. I think it was one of the big aha moments for me, was really understanding that. Like, yes, I understand that verbal is a small part, and the other part of the nonverbal is such a big part of communicating. But until you understand that, because we all assume we're the same type of people and everybody should react the same way. So I think when you listen into the next podcast on Print and Colby, you're really going to understand how to improve your communication, both in the family and in the business. Yeah. But, we always think a lot about communication in businesses, whereas we talk about your business. This is a family and business podcast. We talk about both, intertwined, because when you layer family on top of family and business, it becomes very complex. And there's a lot of feelings and emotions. And there's a lot of, as you said, miscommunication, no communication, over communication. There's so many issues that it's, our goal is to try to help bridge that gap. And so there's both negative and positive communication in the family. So what do you think would be one of the biggest things to help drive positive communication in the family? Is it awareness of the different types of communication? Is that do you think is the biggest issues? We don't really understand how we communicate properly?
I think that's a big thing for sure. The ability to, if we're talking family businesses and we're trying to separate the two, how you communicate to family in business is different than how you communicate to family outside of business. But when you're in that family business, sometimes it's really hard to draw that line.
Yeah.
And have a way to be positive when talking and it not get to that level of, well, my idea is this or your idea is that. And it, the toxicity almost that can come up when you're just not able to effectively communicate either as family or as team members.
So why do you think it is that communication is the hardest to master? Why do you think that, as humans, it's the downfall, it's the issue of every relationship. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so hard to communicate effectively?
To your point earlier, that lack of awareness. Again, I think we spend so much time focusing externally that we don't really reflect inwards on, why that might trigger up or upset me. And then for the other person's part, I'm not expecting them to monitor my energy, but if they have an awareness about I said that, so that might trigger her, then they're going to know they might not get the best version of myself, which comes up more in print later on. But that's definitely one of the big things.
Yeah. I don't know why they don't teach communication in school. Really,
financial
it's the biggest
literacy.
Financial. Yeah. Let's learn how to cook a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's learn how to, I guess you can't say balance a checkbook anymore because I don't think people have those, but financial cooking and communication, because it seems to be the problem that is with every situation, whether it's your friends, your girlfriends, your people you hang out with, your family, your work colleagues, that it's well, that's not what I meant. That's maybe what I said. That's going on my husband's tombstone. It's going to say, but that's not what I meant. That's what I said, but that's not what I meant. And why is that? And then we get all upset. We know these issues, but we still can't seem to deal with them, right? So we're going to have a couple of tools that they can use to sort of help that. The other thing is about with communication and your position either in the family or in the business, whether you're a leader or, you're just starting out. Part of the issue with communication is that if you're just starting in a company, you tend not to want to say anything, maybe because you don't feel it's your place. And then, when you're at maybe a senior level, maybe you're saying too much. And at the family level, who's the matriarch or patriarch, and, the one with the loudest voice sort of gets their way. And, that becomes a bit of an issue is how, does your position in the family or in the business, should that influence your communication style at all?
I don't know if it should, but I know it does. It's just so complex because if you think about a family, if you're a second generation coming into the family business, you've always kind of just followed by what your parents say or tell you to do, right? Which, especially if they're new to the business, like you said, they're not speaking up, or giving their opinions or whatever, but they might have a great idea, but they're always like, nope, mom and dad raised me to, do as they say, right? And so for them to find their voice. And so I think from the parents' perspective in business, if they're coming to them as their boss, I think that really needs to be treated as you're an employee, I'm an employer, and you need to set that very distinct boundary, which can be really complicated.
It's complicated.
Families.
Trust me. I know.
How did it work for you?
Well, it's very hard to distinguish between, particularly if it's family members in a business, is to distinguish between that's my son or daughter versus that's an employee of mine. And I think we're going to get into, down the road, we're going to get into the 3-circle model, which is really understanding the distinction between working in the business and being a family member and trying to separate those. And that's actually the best for everybody, the people in the family and the people in the business, because you don't want that silver spoon kind of issue where you can't say anything to them because they're the boss's son or daughter.
Right.
However, that never seemed to be a problem in my office.
Well, that's good.
I heard everything, so it was all good. But I think one of the things we've kind of touched on here a little bit is that it's important not only to understand yourself and how you like to be communicated with. You know, I'm very abrupt. I'm to the point. Like, I don't pussyfoot around at all. I mean, I think people call me, you know, intimidating, aggressive, whatever, but I just speak my mind. But it's also good to understand somebody else and how they are, because some people are very mild, very soft-spoken. And, you know, again, it's the loudest voice tends to win a lot, particularly you know, in families or in a board meeting, right? You've got people who never say a word, and that's understanding who they are and what they are. Do you think that that's important, that there's a big distinction between understanding yourself and then understanding other people? Like,
yeah. I mean, again, awareness has to start with ourselves, but the reason why I like, you know, Kolbe and print is it gives us the language to better communicate with one another about, you know, why someone is the way they are, why I am the way I am, and why there might be that miscommunication, and how we can bridge, you know, that difference.
So just for our listeners, so print and Kolbe are two assessment tools. They're very quick assessment tools, and they sort of put you into categories of how you do things and why you do things, and sort of the underlying reasons you do things, and then how you take action, which I think are very, very important. They're not personality tests. They're just a little bit different. And personality tests are fun to do. It's kind of interesting. You're like, oh yeah, that's me. And we all do that. It's kind of fun. But the more important thing is not just to do these assessment tools or understand who you are, because I'm sure a lot of you out there have done assessment tools. But it's important that the people you're working with or in your family or communicating with also have done them, so that you understand each other. Because if I understand myself, that's not going to help you communicate with me.
Yeah. I've used it in past relationships. I've had most of my family Kolbe'd. I'm starting to get them print, so I can better navigate those relationships and like have everyone be able to be their best without getting triggered or, you know, reacting in a way that is not natural for them.
So communication, again, we talk about is, you know, the verbal, the nonverbal, and the tone. But also, you know, when we talk about communication, it's also how you want to be communicated to in the age now of technology. Like, I don't want an email that's 4 pages long. I want bullet points, and that comes down to who I am. But again, we assume that everybody wants to, you know, be treated the same way.
Right.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest downfalls in communication, is that we assume everybody should be like us. Well, I personally think they all should be like me, but as you know, that having everybody who's alike is, you're going to get nothing done.
Yes. No.
Right? It's not going to work well. You need a good, well-rounded team, and you're going to have you know, you pick your team at work, but you don't pick your family. And so you're left with what you've got, or you have what you have, and you have to learn to deal with it. And there's always somebody in the family who doesn't communicate well or overshares, or, you know, anyway, it's we could have a whole topic on just family dynamics at the dining room table or Christmas.
Yeah.
So Brett, you've been coaching for a long time. So when you go into a client's place of work or home or wherever it is you're working, what is the first thing that you sort of assess or look at when it comes to communication?
Well, if I'm just sitting one-on-one with the entrepreneur or whoever, and they're telling me about issues, and I'm like, well, have you talked to them about it? No. Why not? Well, I don't know what to say. So I think it's like they place so much significance on the words that they're using, which, as we know, is only 7% of how we communicate. I'm sure the team member that they might have an issue with has already recognized by now that there's a different issue that is not being addressed. And so I'm like, it always pays to be direct.
Now, does that, you know, if the person doesn't know what to say or how to say it, you know, can they use different forms of communication? So maybe it's not, you know, they don't want to have that, they don't want to confront somebody because of their personality or who they are. You know, is there other ways to communicate, or is it really sitting down, talking to people, and maybe having your bullet points ready? Being who I am, I like bullet points, but having sort of stuff ready when you're communicating. Like, how do you start to get them to open up and communicate? Because we are going to have to use words, right?
Yes.
We're in a business.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always a fan of making sure you're getting them in the same room, because you can't pick up those nonverbal cues. I'm like, how do I say this tactfully? If they're saying something that's not exactly positive feedback,
Right.
You know, it might sound harsh or seem harsh, but if their body language is saying like, I'm sorry to give you this feedback. Not that they're actually apologizing, but their body language is like, I want you to be better, I think can help improve the communication and how it's received by the person.
Do you think that using Zoom, because we've been in Zoom now for the number of years, that has helped or hindered communication?
It might depend on the individual. I think it helps being able to see the face, especially, I mean, when we get into Kolbe, I will explain a bit more why, but for a lot of people out there, being able to see people during especially important conversations, it's beneficial to see facial expressions and body language as much as it is tone of voice. Not everyone will receive an email as well as they will receive a conversation about the same topic.
I got to tell you, I think Zoom was one of the best inventions ever. I mean, I knew it was there before, and I was on a couple of calls, but I remember a couple of years before COVID, we were looking at a product for the office that the developer was out west somewhere, and they wanted to have a virtual call. We're like, what? Aren't you coming into the office?
Yeah.
Like, no, we're going to do it virtually. I'm like, okay. So it was my very first experience with that. And it was great, actually. I mean, we were able to see, and you can share, you can either hold stuff up, you can do whatever. I think it was a great form of communication. I love it compared to the telephone. I don't like the telephone as much. I mean, I was a big telephone person. I prefer that than email a lot of times, because you get to talk to someone, you can listen to them right away and get the tone of their voice. So the words, they might be saying no, but really it's like, I just need more information, kind of a no, like, I'm not sure. And you can see by their facial expression or the tone of the voice that, as opposed to me, which is, I think, part of the issue that people say that I'm intimidating, is I'll just send a note back saying no. Well, I'm just saying, well, no. But I don't, because I'm not a person of a lot of words.
Right.
I talk a lot. Don't get me wrong. I talk a lot. But if the answer is no, I don't go into a whole page of why. I just go, I'm not a fluffy. I mean, I remember in school writing a story, and the girl next to me, she became a writer, but she was, we had to do something about a black cat. Some description, and mine was like, the cat was black and had 4 legs, 2 eyes, and a tail, and a couple of ears.
Very literal.
Like, here's the cat. And, meanwhile, she had like 4 pages on this cat, right? And so I think part of my communication style and loving the Zoom now, or, whatever video conferencing system you use, is that you can see the person and you can see the reaction. You can see the eyes glaze over. You can see the eye roll. They're going off screen. Like, where are they?
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think people are starting to realize more that communication is important in all aspects, in the family in particular. And it's not just, fathers knows best, that old show, Fathers Knows Best. It's actually about working together and collaboratively and understanding each other. Anyway, so before we wrap up, is there any last word of wisdom? Like, what is the final word? It's all yours. Go ahead, Brett.
So much pressure. Communication is such a big one for me. I think it's good to understand how other people like to communicate as much as it is yourself, and then how you choose to respond versus react in those potentially more heightened situations, whether that's for positive or negative reasons.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And again, just for listeners, please join into the Print and Kolbe Assessment podcast we're going to talk a little bit more about Kolbe, and we're going to talk about the why view of print. And those are 2 communication tools that we use to help open up communication lines and hopefully avoid some divorces or hiring or firing mistakes.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find Blue Roots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.